Hi there, my name is Amanda, and I'm going to be talking to you about how monkeys are in danger due to the impacts of deforestation. In order to understand what the problem is here and why monkeys are in danger, you need to have a little bit of background information on what deforestation is and why that's an issue. So deforestation by vocabulary.com is defined as the clearing of trees or transforming a wooded area into cleared land. But basically what that means for monkeys in particular is that the land and the habitat that they live in, typically forest areas and tropical places, are being taken down, whether it be cutting them down, burning them down, so on and so forth, in order to take that forest land out and use it for a different purpose. And that's hurting the monkey habitat because it's taking away their livelihood. Deforestation and what that means for the monkey habitat. Now let's talk about the thing that leads to this phenomenon in the first place. There are direct human causes and there are non-direct human causes. Non-direct human causes are going to be the things that we have little to no control over, things like overgrazing by the animals and natural disasters, such as wildfires, floods, and droughts. Then there are the direct human causes. Those are going to be the things that we do have main responsibility for. Unfortunately, the majority of causes of deforestation are the fault of human beings. The first one being agriculture. Agriculture is the largest cause of deforestation due to those lands being stripped away of their natural habitat and turned into other things to use for farming or things like cattle herding. And then there are other reasons that humans cause this to happen as well, such as mining, drilling, buildings and cities being built, forests turning into pavement, palm oil production, and then of course logging, where we use timber and paper products from those trees. As mentioned just a moment ago, agriculture is the biggest culprit of deforestation. The current contribution of agriculture to deforestation varies by region, but the industrial agriculture is responsible for about 30% of deforestation between Africa and Asia, but in Latin America, it's almost 70%. So just how much of our forest land are we destroying? Did you know that since the 21st century began, an area of humid tropical forest about the size of the entire state of New York is destroyed every single year? And in addition to that, since 1990 all the way to 2016, we lost 502,000 square miles in the entire world of forest. That's an area that's larger than the entire country of South Africa. Here we have an image of what it would look like from above. So like from a monkey's point of view or a giraffe's point of view, maybe even an elephant's looking down into the forest. This is what they would see. And I don't think that quite looks like the home they'd like to have. So why does this matter to monkeys, or how does this impact monkeys? Well, they're having to adjust their diets because the foods that they would normally eat are no longer available or are of limited supply. Their behaviors are changing. They're learning how to communicate differently and possibly more effectively to their other mates of their species in order to protect what they are finding as far as food goes. And then they are also at risk of extinction. Let's talk about diet changes and what that means for monkey species. Animals that live in disturbed habitats generally consume different types of food resources than their counterparts that live in undisturbed habitats. What that means is that monkeys that live in undisturbed habitats or habitats that have not been impacted by deforestation spend the majority of their lives among the trees. The majority of their diet is based off of leaves and fruits. And so what that means is that those monkeys who have been impacted by deforestation may not have those options or the availability of those anymore, or at least as much as they used to. So what happens is that they end up spending more time not looking for that food because they know it's not available. A healthy diet includes various fruits and leaves that provide the carbohydrates and the nutrients that they need to survive, just like us humans do. They have a very particular diet that is optimal to keep them surviving and healthy. A less than optimal habitat may sustain lower GI microbiome richness and the diversity regardless of the plant species being utilized. And monkeys that do live in captivity may be getting a better diet, which actually may sound very surprising to you because a lot of people have an idea that animals that are in captivity, such as zoos, are not better off because they don't get the same treatment or the natural habitat that they come from. Unfortunately, since we are destroying their natural habitats, they don't get what they should from their natural habitat anymore at this time either. So since we know what they're supposed to be eating and we can provide that to them in captivity, it may actually be better for them because they cannot get that in their natural habitat anymore. Not only have there been changes in the diet for these monkeys, there's also been major changes in their behavior. Due to the fact that they are having increased contact with humans, monkeys do not have as much of a animalistic territory anymore. They are increasing that contact with humans because the areas that they typically would be found in have been transformed into areas that humans are using instead. In addition to that, we are captivating these animals more often, and so because of that, they have increased contact with humans as well. So genetically, as time goes on, generations to pass, their behavior will eventually over time change and has already been doing so. In addition to that, they have less activity because they're not searching for food anymore. They know where their food sources are and they're very limited. So they stick to those same patterns of being able to do that. And they've increased their time on the ground and decreased their time living in the trees. The majority of a monkey's life is lived in the trees, and that's where they have always been able to gather their food. But now that that's not the case, they spend more time looking for food on the ground rather than living in the trees. Another way that monkeys' livelihoods have been impacted by deforestation is that their communication has had to change. A good example of this is that the howler monkeys' howls are now longer, and this is for two reasons. The first one is because once they have found a food source, they need to contact other monkeys to let them know that they have found food. And so their howls have increased in their duration and increased in how loud they are to help them do that. The second one is to defend high quality resources. So once they have found a food source that is good quality to them, then they need to be able to make sure that that's not interfered with by another monkey or by another species. So their howls have increased in how loud they are and the duration in order to help protect themselves and to be able to defend their food source. If they did not adapt this and their howls did not get longer, their species may be even more at danger because they would not be able to survive because they would not be able to keep their food sources. What's interesting is that their howls become even longer in specific places, such as the forest interior and such as the river edge. And the reason for this is because the sources are naturally better in those places and they have less deforestation that has happened there. So the monkeys know that those places are going to be better quality resources and they use that to defend them. What's good to know is that these areas should be conserved if at all possible, because those are the areas that the monkeys are using already. Let's talk about the last thing that we're going to discuss about impacts that deforestation is having on monkeys and all other primate species. The risk of extinction. Populations that have survived extensive habitat loss may still face extinction owing to a time lag between when the initial habitat last started and when the eventual population does collapse. An example of this is the lion-tailed macaque. Extinction is imminent for this species due to the loss of habitat, and that was caused purely by deforestation. The current unprecedented rate of habitat destruction in Southeast Asia will end up resulting in 13 to 42% of regional populations over the next century, and at least half of that, which will represent global species extinctions. So as you can see, there are many different extinction issues for the primate species, and unfortunately, I wish that I could say different, but it is purely because of deforestation issues, and we as humans are the cause of that. So let's connect the dots. What does all of this mean for green criminology? Why is this a big deal, and what does it matter? Green criminologists have done work over the last decade to help limit deforestation to start, including laws and limitations on what can be deforested, when it can be deforested, and how much. And due to those limits, we are making progress. It's just going to continue to take time and continue to take effort. Tropical deforestation is now becoming an international political issue, and that's for many different reasons. Not only is tropical deforestation harmful to the monkeys and other animals that's their natural habitat, it's also harmful to us humans, and we're doing it to ourselves. Tropical deforestation is one of the leading causes of greenhouse gas emissions, and this is very dangerous. So now it's becoming a political issue, and many different countries are doing the best that they can to try to implement new procedures and policies to help with that. Species justice. This is probably the biggest factor from green criminology that matters in this situation. Species justice is when there is harm intentionally being done to either an animal species or to a plant species. Humans see themselves as the supreme species, and because of that, we typically see other animals and other plants and species as products for us to use. And so often we forget that those things matter as well. We have to be justice and fair to them as well. So in this particular situation, discussing the deforestation of habitats for primates, not only is this species injustice for the primates that are needing that habitat, it's also species injustice to the plants and trees that are being deforested. I know that that was a lot of information to take in a short amount of time, so let's just kind of wrap up here and discuss what we've learned. The biggest problem is that deforestation is harming our primate species. Unfortunately, humans are to blame for a lot of that, and it's our responsibility to acknowledge it and to start to change it. How are we doing it? Agriculture is the biggest cause of deforestation, but there are other reasons, things like logging for timber so that we can have paper products and things like that. But there are also things that we don't have control over, such as natural disasters like floods or droughts or wildfires. So considering we can't control those, that should give us more of an incentive to control the things that we can and to make efforts to change deforestation at its best. Why is this a problem for monkeys? Well, their diet is changing, and so because of that, their health is changing. Their behaviors are changing, and they are at risk of extinction. Some primate species are very endangered, and so it's our responsibility to do what we can to try to help that not happen or further itself. And how does this relate to green criminology? How does this all tie into what we've been talking about all semester? Species justice. Species justice is the definition of when we are intentionally harming animals or plants because they are a species other than our own. We see ourselves as humans as the supreme and superior. So it's our responsibility to realize that that's not necessarily true, and all species should have equal rights. And we are making new efforts in green criminology to try to change these things, to implement new policies and new procedures in order to change deforestation for the better.